Welcome back, Top Shelf. For this episode, I'm handing the podcast over to Ghosty Things. She has this cunning plan to interview Top Shelf's last great streamer. Yes, this episode features me. It's all yours, Ghosty.
All right. Crinkle, crinkle, crinkle.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you tell us something about yourself that we may not already know?
Well, so as I just said, my name's Crinkle. That's pretty much what I go by online, or some variation thereof, depending on
Mm.
if it's available. It's been my gamer name for almost 20 years now. I've been a gamer for most of my life. I'm also a software developer. I coded my first thing probably when I was about 7 years old, and it was a game. So, uh, right on an old Commodore 64. So I've been doing it for a long time. Um,
Yeah.
I'm also a Twitch streamer. Been doing that for a little over a year now. Got into that um, mainly because maybe something some people know about me, but I don't mind talking about now. Is a couple years ago I was diagnosed with cancer, and I had several surgeries that thankfully took care of that, and but it left me uh, kind of in a bad place physically and mentally, and I needed a hobby. I needed to redirect my thoughts, and I got into streaming and met a lot of cool people online through streaming, and who have many of them I consider friends now, and really helped me out. So here I am now, top shelf slash great streamer.
Yeah, it's an honor to be back interviewing top shelf slash great streamer. Uh, it's truly wow. But I think what's like really special about you is you're a streamer and people tune in to see what's going on in the city, or they tune in the morning when you're playing Dead by Daylight just to hang out and have coffee with you, like myself. But you are like who you are comes through. And I think people connect to you because you're really honest and real, and you have had really hard times. And I think a lot of people who maybe themselves have been through some real hardships like since that, and I think you just connect to people really well. So yeah, I
Well,
like your
thank you.
little
You're
corner of the
making me
internet.
blush. You're making me
That's
blush.
real
I
though.
don't take compliments very easily, but I do appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah. So you said you've been a gamer your whole life. Were any of those games role play oriented? How did you get into role play?
Um, Not really. Most of the games I would play, like, I mean, GTA, just the regular game, I've played all of them. I was always into the Assassin's Creed anthology. I've played every single one of them. Um, I got into Dead by Daylight because my nephew, who also streams Cheeky Sloth, was playing it, and I got into playing that on his stream, and then I started streaming it too, because it's an easy game to stream, and brings a good audience that likes to chat.
Yeah.
Um, but I never got into RP until I met Rat Parade through his stream. Um, I came across Rat Parade because my nephew again would raid him. This was when Rat was doing DBD streams, and I'd watch. I never really chimed in, and I got to know you a little bit in Cheeky's stream. Um, and then one day Rat was streaming the High Life 5M server as his Louis character,
hmm
Louis
I
McGee, I
remember
think his
when
name
you,
was.
yes, Louis McGee, and I remember when, because I, as you know, the diligent wife would tune in, even though I didn't understand it. Like I was watching those streams thinking I just don't get this RP thing. Like I don't get the appeal, but that's how you and I started talking more was because we were both in the chat just observing the mayhem.
Yeah,
Um
and it didn't take long. Like it was one stream where I'm like, I gotta do this. I remember it was an interaction that his Louis character was having with the cops, and they were making fun of his bald head, and I'm like, that
yes.
it was very funny, and
Yes.
and I like GTA, and I like GTA
Mhm.
5, especially, and I'm like, this is a thing. I had no idea this was a thing, and I'd done some acting back in college and stuff. So I never did role play, but I'd done play acting, little one act plays and stuff.
Cool.
When I was in high school, I did Rocky Horror, so I had some background in it, um, in acting at least. But role play I never actually did, and I joined that server with him and Uncivil Alpha, which all we really did was sit around and play blackjack. Um,
That
then
sounds familiar.
yeah, a little bit.
Hmm.
Then then we were looking at a different server that was whitelisted because High Life wasn't whitelisted, and there was a lot of not good RP going on there, in my opinion. So we went to a whitelisted server called Twitch RP. I don't know if Rat ever played there. I played there for like a week,
I don't think
and
he
then
did.
yeah, and then I Uncivil Alpha sends me a message, and I've known him for a long time, even longer than I've known anyone else. And he's like, "Hey, there's this server. It's really cool. It's coming out of beta. You should check it out." And I think he said the same thing to Rat, and me and Rat joined on the same day, and that's how I
Mm,
got in the RP and in the top shelf. All thanks to your husband.
he's good for some things.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you were around like a lot of the people who are still in the city from those early days where it was exciting if there were like 5 people on.
Mm-hmm.
When you think back to those early days of the city, what makes you nostalgic? Like what and how has the city for the like what's the biggest change that you've seen since then?
Um. Honestly, I don't think there's anything nostalgic. I don't get nostalgic about those early days. Mainly because I think back to how to my RP back then, and some of the other people that had just joined, and we were babies, so to speak. It wasn't that long ago, but um, yeah, I think it was back in November. But some of us were very new to it. I cringe at some of it, um, just because we were so new and we were still we were really learning about RP.
Mhm.
Um, where the city's at now, especially with some of those early people that were there that are still around. Um, there was, you I see the maturity in the RP has really grown. Also, the city itself has gotten better thanks to the constant development and quality feedback that everyone gives for the development of the city. It's really grown into something that feels like it's ours. But also, it's also something that's very welcoming to
Mhm.
new people, regardless of their level or maturity in RP. Everyone there is helping everyone out. They're very accepting community of everyone. They're extremely accepting of streamers, which is great. Um,
Yeah.
and so I don't really get nostalgic about it. It's more I kind of cringe at it just because it was so new at the time and just learning everything.
So if I think that's a really good point that a lot of people have matured over time and learned. Maybe some people have taken harder lessons than others. So what's been your greatest lesson in RP?
So I did a story, and I get a lot of comments on this story, a lot of positive comments about the story arc I did as the pig,
Mhm.
where uh, just a little bit of background. It actually started as a costume that Mr. Pearl, my main character, wore to help find who pocket wiped Mason.
I don't know if I knew that.
Yeah, it was just Mr. Pearl dressed up as just went to the clothing store and put this outfit
Yeah.
on and was, and I put on the voice mod so that people might, didn't, not that we're supposed to voice ID, but you do,
Mhm.
um to try and find out, who it was. And I ran into Skimmers and Mason. And Skimmers got really freaked out. Or at least, RP wise, he portrayed that he was kind of freaked out, and it kind of popped into my head. I'm like, this is something, and I remembered something that Skills had said in Discord about, someone wanting to play a serial killer, and he said that, something along the lines of serial killer RP is difficult or not possible or something. Um, and the reason is that you can't just go around and randomly kill people.
Mhm.
So I started thinking, I'm like, can I make a character? Can I actually make this pig character as a character, not another, not Mr. Pearl, um, and do something kind of serial killer ish that actually has RP behind it. Um, and I combined that RP in the city with videos and such to kind of portray, that creepiness about
Mhm.
him. And people loved it. I get comments, "Oh yeah, I saw him and I just noped the fuck out of there." And that was the reaction from a lot of people, and it was pretty cool. And I
Mhm.
did this whole arc, and then the way that it ended, I am not happy with. Um and it involves some out of character stuff um from someone, and I, in the city, went completely out of character. I flipped the fuck out in the jail cell, out of character. And I have a very bad taste in my mouth because of that whole pig story, because of that. But in hindsight, I learned the most from that. Um, to You really gotta try to let stuff just roll off your back,
Yeah.
because that could have been, for me, that could have been an amazing story for me, and it wasn't because I just didn't let something roll off my back.
Mhm.
So I think that's what I've learned and grown from the most, is from that whole experience.
Yeah. Do you so I thought where you were going with this was that it would probably, I would guess, be one of your favorite story arcs, but you mentioned that it's actually kind of left a bad taste in your mouth. What is your favorite story arc, either that you've been a part of or that you've witnessed in Top Shelf?
Um, I want to answer with two. One that does not involve me, and one that does. I'll start with the one that doesn't. Um, and it was one that you touched on in your interview, and that's the Otis story, with Abraham and Metheny, and what was Alpha's name?
Moses.
Moses
Moses
Otis.
Otis.
I knew it rhymed. I knew it rhymed, and I'm like, I couldn't think of what it was. Yeah, Moses, Abraham, and Metheny.
Yes.
Um, I
Super
actually,
biblical and then Methany.
yeah. Um, I actually wasn't home, and I was away, and I everybody, family had gone to bed, and I just got on my phone, and I saw that on Civil Alpha was streaming, which was rare.
Mhm.
So I popped it up on my phone, and um, I'm like, well, who is this? And I hear the voices, and I'm like, that's Rat. That's Ghosty. I'm like, and it was right at the beginning. You guys were outside the courthouse. You were talking to Teja, and I'm like, okay, this is compelling. It was on my phone. I'm like, all right, no, I gotta. I went and found a big screen TV. Luckily, it had a Chromecast on it. I just cast it up, and I'm sitting in my in laws' living room watching this on a big screen TV like it's a movie.
Jeez.
Um, and I sat there through the entire story, and it was engaging. It had depth. It had twists and turns, and just the entire thing from start to finish was, yeah. I couldn't look away from it.
And it was all unplanned. Like the blueprint was avenge Gideon. Then that was it.
Yeah.
The rest was just what came of the evening.
Yeah, and after the fact, and talking with Alpha and Rat and you, and hearing some of the backstory of how this went about, and learning that it was just, i- you know avenge Gideon, press play.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm like, that sounded very uncomfortable to me. Even the pig character, I had ideas and plans.
Mhm.
I modeled him off of certain characters, and followed, like the main thing that he was kind of modeled after was Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs. And I brought
Mhm.
in other, like, from Split, the character in Split, and shit, even Kane from WWE. Just so I had a basis for who he was, and I had not a script, but I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. And when it didn't work, it kind of was like, well, shit, it didn't work. But then, you guys did that without any kind of plan. And I'm like, that is kind of um, uncomfortable to me.
It was intimidating.
So,
It was.
so that's going to lead into the second story arc that I want to talk about. And it is extremely fresh in my head, because even though this is going to air weeks after we record it, Um, I just completed and posted the video of the Winchester story,
Yes. I'm like halfway through it. So,
and I took so Winchester as a character, he was very serious. He loved his job. Um, you know, I didn't play him with much of a um, basis of my own personality. Like, for example, Dante, Mr. Pearl, is very much me.
yeah.
I'm not a gang member and stuff, but personality wise, he's very much me. And the reason is because he was my first character, and that's, baby. Like I said, when we were baby RPers, it was easy to just be me.
Yeah.
He's jovial. He's
Until he
sarcastic.
until he pops
He,
off.
it,
Don't make him mad.
well, yeah, I was just gonna say he's sarcastic, and he just completely pops off, and gets mad, and that's very much my own personality. um but Winchester, I was like, no, let's create someone serious in his job. I made him older, to help portray that. As we found out in the latest video, he was 90. um
What?
yeah.
Why was he okay? I think it's funny. I think everyone should know that the birth date on Winchester's driver's license is 1994. And so I knew that because I think one time we were all standing in the hospital talking about it, and I think Manon's birth year is 1994, and you were like, "Me too," and we were all like, "What?" And so at the end of at your tribute video when it said you were 90. I was like, "Okay, is this a meme? Is it that no one really knows how old he is and no one will ever know the true age of Winchester?"
No, he was really 90.
What?
Um, so there were some clues in Winchester's story. If you had heard them, that Winchester was, and look, I completely ripped this off of MASH, the TV show MASH. There's a character in MASH, Charles Emerson Winchester III, and he was an army medic in the Korean War. So Winchester was an army medic in the Korean War. So his birthday couldn't have been 1994. And even then, actually, when I was making the video, I had his birthday as 1962. So, okay, he's 60, which was also something that was, you know, talked about in RP, that he was actually, like 60 some years old. But then it's like,
I
that didn't
vaguely
match
remember
up. That
that.
doesn't match up to the Korean War either. So it's like, okay, well, he has to be like at least 18 when the Korean War happened. So, all right, he was born 1932.
Oh my god. That
Um,
makes okay, this makes the Code Browns that much more plausible.
oh, ew. Um,
Ew.
so I don't remember where it was going with this. Oh
Well,
yeah, the
really
Winchester arc.
yes.
So Winchester was very serious and such, but I was getting a little. Um, I loved EMSRP, but I was getting a little kind of burnt on the non RP stuff that I was having to do as chief.
Mhm.
Interviews and people coming into my DMs talking to me about in city stuff because I was chief, that I need to take care of things, and I'm like, no, this all should be dealt with in character. You go talk to the chief in character, and it
Yeah.
was all feeling very much like my job, and
Mhm.
I was not enjoying that aspect of it. So I'm like, I have to. I'm gonna take a break. So I did the whole arm losing his arms thing, and
Mhm.
I went into that with the I'm not going to plan anything to see how I could to see if I could do that. The only thing that I planned was I went in before my stream when when there was nobody in the city, and I made the armless model and saved it so that I could switch to it at some point in my stream. And I switched to it, what like I said, oh, I'll be right back, and I put up my be right back screen, and I went and switched it, pretending that I had to go pee or something. Um, so I did. That was my only plan. I'm like, he's gonna lose his arms, and that's all I knew. So
Mhm.
it was the whole thing of him losing his glasses and running into things, and it was really. It turned out I was very happy with it. I was very happy with how the rest of the city was during that whole thing, especially Manon, who you played, and Barton, twice as nerdy. It was emotional, and I wasn't expecting that, and it was cool. So I took my little break, and then I'm like, I wasn't feeling better about it. Um, and I'm like, I think I need to be done. And then I went into the whole, I'm like, well, how can he come back with arms? And I tried a tattoo, and it was okay until I saw someone else in the city with the same tattoo. Um, so then I just start messing around with outfits, and he get this cyborg outfit, and then I start messing with his face, like he's starting to look like Darth Vader. And I made, actually, one of my videos was had a little snapshot of Vader without his mask in it, and I took, like I said earlier, where I take aspects from things, especially movies. It was like Vader, it was like the Borg from Star Trek, Terminator, and I kind of melded them all together. Um, and I had zero plan. Like, I didn't even have an ending in mind.
going
I'd
to
want
ask if you, like, knew that Winchester's story arc was done permanently that night, or if, like, when you came to that realization that, "Oh my god, this is it."
I wanted it to be it, but I didn't have a plan for how it would be it. I'm like, well, he could die, he could ride off into
Mhm,
the sunset retired, he could be demoted, and I could continue playing in EMS, but just not as chief. I like
mhm.
all of all these things crossed my mind as I was fine with all of them, but I wasn't going towards any specific one. And I was very uncomfortable during that stream because of that.
Because of not having plans?
Because I was well, because I wasn't didn't have a plan, and also it went really weird, really weird.
Like, okay, how so?
Um,
Well, obviously, yes, it's a sci-fi scenario
yeah, for
in a
Winchester,
yes.
How does a
Yes.
sci-fi scenario fit in with Chief Winchester? It didn't.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, and I'm going through the motions, and the city was wonderful during
Mhm.
the whole thing. The entire city got involved somehow.
Oh, yeah.
People got involved I didn't even know because I wasn't seeing any of it from my perspective. And the cops were perfect in it because one thing I didn't want to happen, I mean, if it happened, it happened. I did not want it to be a shots fired or a rampage situation.
Mhm.
I didn't want, just to get gunned down. But if that's what happened, it's what happened. But I knew what I didn't want to happen. And it didn't happen. And the cops were perfect in that scenario. They were firing but not hitting us. They were shooting at feet. They were shooting over our heads. It was perfect. Um, and but I wasn't finding a way to. I'm like, where is this going? And I mean, it's so sci-fi. It's so out there, and I've got these people following me now, and it's like,
Yeah, and you're live, so there's no going back. You're just in it.
yeah, I there's nothing I could do, and I did not have a plan.
Mhm.
Um, I just went with the flow, and honestly, and you'll see this if you watch the video, if you've watched the video, or if you want to go back and watch it, or if you were watching live. I didn't know what I was going to do until I was at Humane Labs and Carter said, "You're a doctor, you're supposed to be helping people."
Ooh,
And I'm like, "That." And complete credit to skills on that,
yeah.
at the way he did that, the route he took to talk to me about it, because it clicked in my head. It's like, that's who I am. Chief can come through this, realize that everything that has happened since he's been this cyborg was wrong, and he is who he is. He's helped the city. He's helped the city for a long time. He's a healer. He's a doctor. He took an oath, and he was the type of person that would sacrifice himself for to help others. And that's how
Mm.
it ended. Now I got a little antsy at that when it went through my mind, because I'm like, I can't go in there and kill myself because I am not in, like, suicide RP to me is atrocious. It's
Right.
again, not only is it against the rules, but it shouldn't be any part.
Yeah.
It's too close to home. It's too close to home for
Mhm.
other people. I don't want to do that. So I'm like, well, how can I do that? And I'm like, maybe, if I could just get someone to just turn my suit, more of a sacrifice than a suicide. And I
Yeah.
knew there was a fine line there, and I was a little uncomfortable with it. But the way it ended up, the way it played out, it worked, and I was okay with it. I hope other people
Mhm.
are too. Um, with Cassidy, basically, you know, turning the suit off, and then he was dead. And I'm also kind of thinking, well, he was kind of dead from the beginning. That wasn't him.
Yeah.
He died when he lost his arms.
Mhm.
So it worked, and I not necessarily to say that my own story is my favorite, but more from the aspect of I'm happy with how my story turned out
Yeah.
and with how other people in the city joined in properly and RP'd it. Um, Not only in their way, but I think they got what I was trying to do. So any of these stories that kind of bring the whole city together, I
Mhm.
really do enjoy.
Yeah, and because it's you want there to be good storytelling, but it also feels good as the player when the people in the community have buy-in, right? Like when they're invested and they want to be a part of it too.
Yeah, I think that's one of my favorite things that happens. I'll call it citywide RP.
Yeah.
Is when the entire city is kind of is involved
Mhm.
in some aspect of it. Whether it be directly involved or they've been affected somehow.
Yeah. So clearly Winchester is no more. Rip.
Rip.
I'm going to miss him. I know I know a lot of people are going to miss him, but it was fun playing EMS together. But you have three other characters who we can expect to see around the city, which is Frank Pembleton. I don't know your PD number. I could have sounded super professional there and called that out, but I don't know it. But
It could change
he is a
anyway. It,
cadet.
it it could possibly change between now and when this airs. Who knows?
Oh,
So
there you go. Cadet Pembleton. We've got Jim Bob Cooter.
yeah,
And we have Dante McCrinkle, aka Mr. Pearl. I hope that whatever you want to do with these characters, your hopes and dreams come true with them. And I know that we've seen some really cool times together being in the Rat Gang, but by your own admission to me, you've struggled playing Mr. Pearl at times. And I know a lot of people in the city, yeah, they may have a couple of characters, but everyone kind of has a main. What would you say to people who maybe are looking at the main character that they play and they're not really sure what to do with them anymore? Like, how can you overcome some of that?
that's an excellent question. Um, yeah, I've struggled a couple times with Mr. Pearl. I think, um, you sometimes you just kind of hit a creative boundary. Um, or and it usually in my experience it happens after you're done a story, and then it's like, well, where do I go from here? I just finished something and now I need to start something again, and that's actually not a good way to look at it. You don't always have to start something um, right after you finish something. Really, when I've hit those roadblocks, um, the first thing that I've done is I talk to people about it. I talk to other RPers about it, and I'm talking about out of character.
Yeah.
I talk to other people in the city that I respect their RP, um, and that I enjoy RPing with. Like, as an example, I've talked to you and Rat about it. I've talked to the entire Rat gang about out of character, about, Mr. Pearl is at a dead end. I've talked to founders and staff about it. I've talked to, people like Sparky and Skills. I talked to about when I was at a dead end with Winchester. Um, and not that, some of those people can help. One of the people I talked to that ended up helping with that was Splishy Splashy, who plays Mr. Pink, and Jose with the Vagos. See, and he's like, "Well, Bahama Mamas is opening soon. Why don't you, come help me out with that?" And I'm like, "This," and it wasn't like "Oh yeah, this is the solution to all my problems," but I viewed it as, well, this could be this, something that jumpstarts
Yeah.
something new. So, get advice, look around and see if there's anything that is coming up or going on that you could possibly get into that maybe is a little bit outside your character. Not that you need to change your character to move on, but maybe you'll get some ideas and be able to move forward.
And Like you said, it's when you said, "I don't think it's a good thing when you are constantly feeling like you have to start something," because that puts so much pressure on yourself, and when you just take a minute to, like, just see what happens, like improv, you're creating a space for someone else to bring a story and an idea to you.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes I mean even talking to people, maybe they can come up with an idea and, not necessarily say, "Oh, go do this," but start to get you involved in maybe their story
Yeah,
or something like that.
yeah. It's a great well, look, we're in a great community, and I'm excited to see what comes our way in the months to come.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, for
Who's
me,
to
I've got
say?
I'm kind of I don't know where I'm going with Mr. Pearl right now. I'm still trying to get my legs steady with my cop character. I mean, I don't know who he even is yet, but well, I'll figure that out, and I'm okay with that. And Jim Bob's just my fuck off character, so
Yeah, please, I protect Jim Bob at all costs, please.
Jim Bob needs to have a cookout with
Yes.
Debbie and Laura.
Yes, agreed. But thank you so much for having me back. You know,
Well, like I
that
said in the podcast with you, this wouldn't be a thing without you. You were the one that put this idea in my head, so it was obvious to me that when it came time for me to do an interview, that you would be the one to interview me, and I appreciate you taking the reins as it is and
yeah.
doing so. This will be the longest up until now, the longest episode of Roleplay Reels.
Which we knew. We
Yeah, I
knew
knew
this.
I was gonna ramble.
Love it. Don't ever change.
All right. Well, thank you, Ghosty. I am Crinkle, and check us out next time for Roleplay Reels. See you then.